Alright everyone, today is day 1 of the new update. Hope you all pulled the cards you wanted. If nothing goes wrong, we should have more than 2 videos today. Depends on how fast I am. We'll see. So for the first video today, the deck we're playing is Meowscarada plus Decidueye. The most ideal opening active spot leans toward the faster start, meaning the stage 2 that can attack with 1 energy. So you want Sprigatito, Meowscarada's basic, up front. Because this deck doesn't really have speed boosts, you really want to open with Sprigatito in hand. But if you're going second today, and you already have the Decidueye evolution line, you can put a ton of pressure on the opponent. Plus, Rowlet as your Decidueye basic can soak early damage pretty well. So if you go second, starting Rowlet in the active spot is also a solid option. So for this deck's opening positions, there isn't a strict must-do. The deck building is actually pretty interesting. Take a look at my list. One chose to run only 1 Pokeball, plus 1 early ripening essence. Because in grass evolution line decks, early ripening essence is still a really big deal. And as for why I'm only running 1 Pokeball, I'm sure that's the biggest question for a lot of you. First, the deck space is getting tight. Second, even if you're on a list with 4 basics, sometimes Pokeball can still whiff. Like it literally does nothing, because all your basics are already in your hand. So to avoid Pokeball overflow situations, I cut it down to 1 copy. If you want to run 2, you can still run 2. But because early ripening essence is so strong, in a normal list, you might swap that slot for another Pokeball. But since this is grass has way too many exclusive tools. So the space gets really tight. And because of Decidueye, you don't really need Race the Score supporters. You don't need things like Red and Decidueye itself is a card that can snipe the backline like a monster. If we're talking supporters that actually fit this deck, besides Copycat, the other one is of course Erica, the grass-only supporter. Grass Pokemon are naturally pretty tanky. And this list is all stage 2 south. So with that kind of bulk, adding some sustain is never a loss. It's just that if you include Erica, your stage 2 completion rate will definitely drop a bit. Because Copycat gets stronger the fewer supporters you run. The fewer supporters, the faster and harder it pops off. If you can't, compress your hand quickly and create a hand size advantage. Then Copycat can't. Draw a ton of cards and complete this double stage 2 setup. This deck, honestly, in a normal situation, feels really rough to play. But because we have early ripening essence plus Copycat, that's why it can consistently complete evolutions every game. So it's up to you. If you like Erica, you can add her, but even then, cap it at 2 copies max. In Copycat style decks, you absolutely don't want your supporter count over 6. 7 is where it gets dangerous. And now they changed it to look like this, which makes me look like a total noob. Even in casual matches, it forces me to show my last season's rank. Man, I can only say I got gapped. And yeah, Hydreigon and Absol have been strong for 3 straight versions now. It's kind of ridiculous. Let me explain why they've stayed top tier for 3 versions. The key is, when Mega Pokemon dropped, this deck could complete a 1+1+3 setup, meaning it had a compatible 1-point small unit, and it also complemented Absol perfectly. Hydreigon's weakness is that its charging costs HP, right? But Absol has bulk. And even though Absol can play control, it needs 2 energy to get going and its damage isn't high. Hydreigon's advantage is, if you evolve instantly, it becomes a 1 energy attacker with huge burst, hitting for 130 damage. A burst Absol simply can't produce. Put those together, and the 2 of them are basically the perfect duo. So the devs probably realized how serious this was, and this version immediately brought in Meowscarada. Think about it. Why not Skeleturge? Why not Quackwavel? but Meowscarada gets an X. And the other two don't? It's obvious they're targeting Absol. And targeting Hydreigon. And honestly, in my footage I played like 7 or 8 games. Ran into Hydreigon Absol twice and stomped both. For them to beat me is really hard. They have to high roll, and I have to brick. Their win condition is insanely strict. I can use raw stats to suppress Dano, Hydreigon before it evolves, and I can also just choose to snipe Absol, especially when Decidueye is in the mix. Once this deck showed up, I'm pretty sure it's going to massively change the play rates of Hydreigon and Absol. Now let's talk about Meowscarada. What's going on with its attack? It's one energy move, 1,000 faces. Can announce damage, that's true. But the way it announces is really special. You choose a position, not a Pokémon. For example, say I announce the opponent's active spot. As long as the opponent can switch on their turn and move that active Pokémon to the back, they can send up a sacrificial body from the bench to eat that damage instead. It's pretty interesting. When I play it, it feels really fun. But it heavily depends on both players' reads. Like, who am I announcing? I have to think, should they switch or not? Or like, if they do switch, which benched sacrifice do they send up? That's something the opponent has to think about too. It definitely makes the game more entertaining. But you do have to think. Man, I haven't had to think this long in a card game in ages. Alright, let me summarize one last time. The core game plan for this deck is keep compressing your hand as much as you can, and copycat draws like crazy. And you try to complete the evolution lines for Meowscarada and Decidueye. And if the situation calls for it, make good use of non-X Decidueye. I've got 3 scenarios for you as reference. First scenario, you need a 1-point Pokémon. When one of your cards, whether it's Rowlet or Sprigatito, goes down, and your opponent already has 1 point, you don't want them to go 1+2. So for that middle point, you can choose non-X Decidueye. Second scenario, Oricorio. If the opponent is running an Oricorio deck, then our other attackers can't deal damage to Oricorio. Third scenario is the most aggressive, most brutal one. It's for stealing tempo, especially by picking off unevolved Pokémon. Because if Decidueye wants to snipe the whole board, the opponent has to already be damaged. It can't apply instant pressure. Meowscarada's 1,000 faces works the same way. It can't apply instant pressure either. The opponent can adjust by switching and decide who's going to take the damage. But the non-X Decidueye form deals its damage instantly. Once the opponent fills their board with basics, unevolved Pokémon will get deleted the moment they hit the board. As long as their HP is 70 or lower, we just one-shot them in a single hit. One shot straight to the Shadow Realm.
这是这一次的彩蛋宝可梦。如果你喜欢我的影片，订阅、按赞，麻烦用力给它点下去。感谢所有支持，小弟弟我感激不尽，你们一直都是最顶的。
Alright, that's basically the deck explanation. Now let's watch today's matches. Today's third and fourth games of footage are both the strongest decks of this version, Absol and Hydreigon. So let's see whether the new version Meowscarada plus Decidueye's targeted snipes, plus the most important thing-type damage bonus, can absolutely tear apart Hydreigon and Absol, like completely. For this opening, I chose to use Professor Oak first, then throw out the Pokeball, because I felt my luck was going to be terrible. Even with a 2/3 chance, I'd still miss. So Oak first, then Pokeball, to make sure I at least have one evolution line, the Meowscarada line. But sadly, even with Oak plus Pokeball, I still didn't hit Sprigatito. Man, that's cursed. But since we're going second, and the opponent's active already showed itself. There's no way I'm letting this Absol go. So I still pressed in for the attack. Even if I'm going to take 10 poison needle damage, that's fine. Then the opponent used Copycat, did a reshuffle, and placed 2 Dano on the bench. They attached energy to the active, then ended the turn, which means they basically gave up Absol's position. If that's the case, then I'm going to play more aggressively. I'll just keep swinging. Those 2 cards in their hand. Being rare candy, plus Hydreigon isn't that likely anyway. Here, I didn't want to get reflected to death by the active Absol's Poison Needle. So I didn't swing into the active. I swung into the Dano in the back instead. And sure enough, the opponent threw out Shadow Claw. But unfortunately, my deck doesn't run that many supporters. So if you're trying to snipe my supporters, yeah, good luck. All you get is to look at my hand. And because I didn't swing into the active Absol earlier, my active Decidueye stayed alive and didn't die, clinging on at 10 HP. Now we evolve our bench decks first. Then use Early Ripening Essence to pull the non-X straight out of the deck and complete the double Decidueye lines. Now at this point, right, the handsome viewers will be like, "Streamer, wait a sec. Isn't this just a single carry Decidueye deck?" Yeah, you're right. Meowscarada was basically just bait to get you to click. It really is double Decidueye, yup, single carry, true. First, we chip the opponent's active Absol down into lethal range for the benched X, and even into lethal range for the non-X in the active. So the only thing that can save them next is the Miracle Popsicle Lottery. And the moment the opponent switched Absol to the bench, yeah, you can basically call game right there. Because they no longer have a way to instantly heal Absol back to full HP. I've seen a lot of people trash talk that Popsicle card, but I think it's fine. I mean, it's a card game. If there's 0 luck involved, that's kind of weird. Then the opponent fired a Hyper Beam and deleted my active. The charm of Decidueye decks is stealing points. I'm not trying to stat check you when your whole board is stacked with 1/1 plus 3 power. So what if you double evolved Hydreigon? I'm only hitting your 3-point Pokémon, which is Absol. Kinkao. And we cruise to a clean one-sided win. For today's last match, I'll leave it for you to watch on your own. Thanks for watching all the way to the end. This is Greninja Player. See you next time, peace.